Thank you, Jim, for that introduction. Just think, the last time I was here, I couldn't even call him Senator. That's great. A year or so ago when I was here, and when the Tea Party movement was starting, I had a son. I don't know if you remember who that was. We can call him Senator now, too. But you know, they asked me about coming up here to the university, and I said, well, you know, I'm very comfortable. I'm in Texas. We have the week off, and it's swimming weather, and I got my swimming pool, and I think I'd just like to sit around my swimming pool. I said, besides, do you think anybody will come out? And I said, well, all right. They bent my arm, and I said, all right, I'll come out. So I am delighted to see so many people come out. This is just great, and thank you for coming. It's hard for me to turn down any invitation, especially from the young people who are interested in talking about a very special subject, and it's dear to my heart, and that subject is liberty. It's pretty amazing. If you understand the issue of liberty, you also understand the purpose of our Constitution, then you also understand the solution to so many of our problems, if we would just get more people to agree with us. And I am convinced that the troubles that we're having today, whether they're on foreign policy, the monetary issue, the financial issues, the attack on our personal liberties, it's all because we as a people have let our guard down. We have allowed too many politicians to undermine our liberties. And if we would have more people just stand up, read and understand and fulfill the promises that they take in the oath of office to uphold the Constitution, this country would be a lot better off.
Amen.
It is true that I have been concerned for a long time. Matter of fact, it was in 1971 that I had sort of a moment of enlightenment, because I had gotten involved in studying Austrian economics in the 60s. And there was a prediction made in the 60s. As a matter of fact, an early prediction was like in 1945 when the Bretton Woods. I think Bretton Woods is not too far from here, where they made the plans for international management of currency, and they had this Bretton Woods agreement. But it broke down on August 15, 1971, and by that time I had a fairly good understanding of Austrian economics, and I thought, boy, this means that the door is going to be open. It's going to be open for spending and deficits and intervention overseas and welfareism and special interest government. And for that reason, I ran for the very first time in 1974. But my concerns back in the 70s have actually been justified, because it has been perpetual, it has been steady. And if you look at all the economic curves, if you're studying economics, you can find the economic statistics, you see many things, whether it says CPI or spending or deficit, it goes along like this, and then it shoots up like this. And it represents the fact that we have allowed our politicians and our governments to be run totally out of control without any restraint. But the one thing that was obvious to many of us who studied Austrian economics, it was unsustainable. But there's also something in Austrian economics that teaches that although we may know trends, we do not know timing. So in many ways, I'm quite surprised that it has lasted this long, and consider it fortunate. Because if it would have happened 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had you, this new generation that cares a lot more about it than those in the previous generation, that care actually about doing things like ending the Fed in a few years. But it looks like it is coming to an end. It isn't going to be papered over again. Many recessions that have occurred since 1971 have been taken care of short-term by spending more, printing more, and then borrowing more. So we finally get to the very, very big bubble. And I consider the big bubble bursting in the year 2000, not 2008, but 2000, when the NASDAQ bubble burst. This was an introduction to a bad decade, which has continued. Standard of living has gone down for more than just a couple years. It's been going down for more than 10 years. But this time, they've tried all the old tricks, and all the old tricks involve, Well, we're in trouble now, and they believe in Keynesian economics, which says, well, the problem is that the people aren't spending enough money. So if we just print money and give it to the people, they're going to spend money, everything's going to be okay. So what has the Congress done? They came along with TARP funds, they printed a lot of money and passed it out, and the Fed did the same thing. Not $100 billion or $200 billion, hundreds of billions of dollars, and now many trillions of dollars. And the real tragedy is that there's more money printed and passed out by the Federal Reserve in secret than even what the Congress is doing. That's how much out of control this is. This is why if we don't end the Fed tomorrow, at least we have to have transparency. We better get a clean audit of what the Fed has been up to.
Yes.
The last 10 years. This time it's not working. We got into trouble because we spent too much, borrowed too much, and printed too much, and at the same time we regulated too much. So what have they done these last 2-3 years? They are spending like they've never spent before. Deficits have totally exploded. We regulate more than ever. Every time we have a problem, we put on more regulations, and then they wonder why we're not recovering. And it is a difficult problem. We have not seen the end to this. And here, young people like you, getting ready to college, get out of college and go get a job. And good jobs are hard to come by now. So it's vital, not because of theoretical reasons, not because you think it would be a nice thing to do, but because out of our own self-interest of protecting our liberties and protecting our ability to take care of ourselves. And the government has been put in our way. They have hindered us. They have undermined the system where the productivity can occur and where the people can have jobs. So we are now facing this situation, and yet the alternative, what we're getting now, is so difficult politically. So they'll ask me frequently on television and say, all right then, what should you have done? Well, we should have done a lot less, a lot sooner is what we should have done. We should have quit the spending and quit the borrowing, and the politically unpopular thing to do is allow the correction. If things are out of kilter, if the Federal Reserve introduces this notion that it can do central economic planning by artificially lowering interest rates and pretending there are savings and people over-invest, instead of getting production, you get higher prices. As long as they believe that, we can't solve our problem. And as long as we prop it up, the problem won't go away. You need the corrections. There are mistakes made. You need to correct what has gone on. But we've done everything in the opposite way. If the debt has to be liquidated, when there's a lot of bad debt, and these companies and these banks that overextended themselves and made billions and billions during the bubble formation, why was it that the people like you had to be further burdened by bailing them all out? Because you're burdened either by taxation or by the printing of money and the devaluation of your currency. The burden has been placed on the people, and all the bad debt, all the derivatives that they were holding in these mortgages, they were bought by the Treasury and by the Federal Reserve and transferred over to the taxpayer. So they got off the hook and they got bailed out, and they're back making money again. Banks are making hand over fist. There's another, government motor company now. General Motors, they're doing quite well again. But they shouldn't have been allowed. We have to get rid of the mistakes. And the good stuff is left over, it has to be picked up. So politically, it's virtually impossible to say, oh, we'll just let it go. Somebody said to me, he says, oh, then, you had to do it because there would have been a depression if you had not done this. I say, yeah, but the true unemployment rate is more like 22%. Believe me, that's a depression for that 22%. And that is very difficult. Sure, if we wouldn't have bailed out, there would have been a depression. But guess for whom? It would have been the people on Wall Street, the people who deserve bankruptcy.
Yes.
And yet
yes.
they deserve